I want to thank Blueland for sponsoring this video. It's been a while since I've done a Stashbuster, and viewers keep asking for directions on how to make this quilt behind me. This quilt is often called Postcards from Sweden, and I am going to show you all my tips and hacks to make it fast and easy. And better yet, how you can use up what's already in your stash. And stay to the end for a free download. So stick with me and I'll show you how to do it. Hi there, I'm Karen Brown of Just Get It Done Quilts. I give you tips, tricks, and strategies to help you make the quilt that you want to make. And if you like what you see, please click that subscribe button. This is my 11th quilt in the Stashbuster series.
For me, for a pattern to qualify as a Stashbuster, it must be fast, simple, use what you have, and have little or no wastage.
And like all Stashbusters, this quilt is perfect for the times when you need a sudden gift or you just need to take a break from a more complicated project. Way back at IKEA in the early 2000s, Tom Fraser designed a postcard full of bright half-square triangles.
And with that as inspiration, Kelly Liddell of Jelly Quilts published her version on the old Craftsy platform.
And quilters went wild for it, some making quilts exactly like the postcard and others making their own versions. My quilt behind me was made in that same spirit by my sew sisters during the pandemic. And so many people have asked me how to make it. So today I'm going to show you how, as well as my tips for making it easier. The pattern can be made several different ways depending on what you have. The quilt is made from solid colors, and the beauty of this quilt comes from the limited value contrast.
That means not only is there no white, there's no light version of any color. It also means that there's no black and no dark version of any color.
There are also no dull or muddy colors because the contrast in the colors is where the magic is. If you look at these colors on the color wedge, you're going to find them very close to the outer rim, and we call these colors fully saturated. And if you are unsure what I mean by contrast, value, or saturation, check out my color series playlist. Stashbuster quilts are all about using what you have. So go to your stash and find all your leftover solids. I am using up the remnants of my maple and eucalyptus quilt. These are all Andover Century solids. They have a beautiful weight and a finer weave than Kona cotton, so I'm preferring to use them all at once in the same project here. If you don't have any solids, you can also use one-color batiks, grunge, or any other tone-on-tone solid fabric. You can also use both charm packs and layer cakes for this quilt. Just be sure to remove those high and low value fabrics before you start. First, we're going to cut our fabrics into 5-inch strips. Mine are already cut into 5-inch strips, as I make it a habit to process my leftovers after every project. If you want to see more about the sizes I collect and what I do with my scraps, check out this video here.
For cutting, always press your fabrics to remove any creases.
Then it's straightforward to cut them into 5-inch squares. I am terrible at keeping track of how many squares or blocks I have, so my friend Laura gave me this tip. As you're counting, make piles of 10, then just alternate stacking them, and then you just need to count by tens. And I have made 242 squares. Now there are many ways to make a half-square triangle block, and I have made this video showing you 10 different ways depending on the results you want. For this quilt top, we are looking for all our blocks to be randomly different, so we'll use technique number 10, the accordion method. For this method, you just dump all your squares in a bag and then randomly pull out fabrics. Now you don't need to make it completely random if you don't want to. I will follow the rule that they need to be a different color from the previous squares. And I have a yellow and 2 oranges that are very similar. So I'm going to try to avoid that pairing if possible. You might prefer more control than that. like having a bag of warm colors and a bag of cool colors and choosing alternately between them. You might even choose to use only complementary pairs. That is the color from the other side of the color wheel. But it's your quilt, your rules, your way. To make a half square triangle block, you need to start with a square 7/8 larger than the finished size. And most quilters will round up to 1 inch and then trim as necessary. However, in this project, we're working in reverse. We've got 5-inch squares, so if you subtract 1 from that, we're going to end up with 4-inch blocks finished. Take 2 squares and lay one on top of the other and draw a line 1/4 inch to the right of the diagonal. I am using this specialty ruler that was a gift from my crew member Barbara. It's easy to handle and to see the diagonal. And we will sew just to the left of this line. Now grab another square from the bag and make that one the same way. Take the first 2 squares and fold the first square to the left so that the right side of the second square is facing up on the right side. Place square number 3 on top, aligning the right side and the corner, so along the inside of this marked line. And we will repeat this with the 4th square. Draw the line, fold square number 2 out of the way so that the right side of square number 3 is facing up, lay the 4th square on top, and sew. And you just keep repeating these steps. Eventually, you'll have a long accordion-like chain. Here are some tips for the best results. Always start with a tethered thread, either by holding your threads in one hand or by using a leader, which can be blocks or just a piece of scrap. Then work 2 to 4 chains at a time so that your thread is always secured. When marking your fabrics, use a contrasting color. We are drawing on the back of our fabrics, so anything that doesn't bleed is fine. It can be a friction pen, a lead pencil, or chalk will do. Just be sure to mark nice and close to your ruler for an accurate line to sew next to. You more than likely will not sew all your squares together in one sitting. When you start again, you may choose to start a new accordion chain or just add to the previous one. I find between 10 and 15 the maximum squares I like to sew before the accordion becomes too bulky. And to finish your chain, you mark the back of the first square with a line 1/4 inch from the diagonal. With the right side of the accordion facing up, fold over the first square to align with the last. Then sew on the left side of that line, leaving you with a bundle that looks like this. Blue Land has been a long-time sponsor of this channel. Their hand soap has been a family favorite since our first bottle over 2 years ago. You have seen me show you just how easy it is to use their starter set with this bobbin-sized tablet. All you need to do is fill your Forever bottle with warm to hot water just to the fill line. Drop in one of these bobbin-sized tablets, and they are ready to use in minutes, with refills running about $2.50 a tablet. But did you know that Blue Land also makes laundry detergent? With no wrappers, it's easy to use and proven to lift the toughest stains. And it now comes with this fresh spring scent. And they have dishwasher tablets that can tackle those baked on, burnt on stains. And toilet tablets that can remove rust, mineral deposits, lime scale, and hard watermarks. You can get even more savings by buying your refills in bulk or setting up a subscription, which you can customize so that you never run out of your favorites. All you have to do is click on my link below to get 15% off your first starter kit. Blue Land is sharing this special offer just with my viewers. So now we have this accordion circle. Choose what 2 squares you're going to make your first cut between. I use my sharpest scissors and cut between the stitch lines. You don't need to be worried about cutting a perfect line, or even if the seam allowances are 1/4 inch, because we have already sewn our seams. You can use your scissors to cut the remaining blocks, or use a ruler and a rotary blade, and have the HSTs all lying in the same direction. Start at one end and work your way through the stack. To trim up, take your ruler, use washi tape or painter's tape, and lay down 2 to 3 layers along the 4.5-inch diagonal. Align this with the seam on your HST. Trim the sides, and don't forget these corners. Don't press yet. We're going to do that after we decide on our layout. Many of you will know what size of quilt you want to make. You can use this free handout on my website to see how many squares you need to start with. But for me, this project is about using what I have. So I use the chart by looking for the sizes that use the amount of blocks I have, and 242 blocks can make these sizes. I also like my couch quilts around 50 inches wide, so this quilt, 52 by 72 with 234 blocks, will work. Once you know your size, start laying out your blocks. You might be like me and find this step really exhausting. I find I need to set myself some guidelines so I don't find it overwhelming. I will lay out all my blocks just randomly. Then I take a break, and when I return, I'll rearrange any blocks that I think needs it. Then I give myself at least one good night's sleep before I commit to the final layout. Or at least that's the way I normally do it. Did you notice this pile of rock climbing equipment in my sewing room? They belong to my number 3 child, who has been in and out of our home for the past 2 months. And he just returned when I hit this stage. That means I lost my sewing room and my design wall, as this is also our guest bedroom. So down came all the blocks for me to put together in my studio. So I laid them all out in a grid by color, and then I opened the PreQuilt app and loaded them in there. It's fairly straightforward.
I put in the dimensions of my finished block, then I put in the number of rows and columns in my quilt.
First you add in all your colors, then you color an HST block for the pairing that you have. For me, it was a fairly long list. I started with the darkest, and I randomly added them to the quilt. And my only rule was 2 colors could not touch. Different HST pairings had different quantities. And there's a counter right beside the block so you can keep track of how many are in the quilt. Once you have all your blocks in the design, play with the random rotate button until a design appears that you like. Then you can grab the rotate tool and make changes as you desire. And this is the layout I am going forward with.
Now I have all the blocks laid out, it's time to put it together.
Starting with the top 2 rows, press all the HSTs on the odd rows with seams to the right. For all blocks on the even rows, we are pressing to the left.
Then sew the blocks into pairs and follow the same pressing pattern. Seams on the odd rows go right, seams on the even rows press left.
Then remove the top and bottom stitch, so this will make it easier to spin our seams in the middle.
Then we nest our seams snugly together.
And sew these pairs together. We are spinning the center seam, which means as you press the seams, they follow a circle.
First I set my seam, then I finger press the right side, then the left side, then I press with a hot iron. When you sew your sets of 4 together, they will also spin, but they spin the opposite way.
If you are consistent with your pressing, when you finish rows 3 and 4, the seams will nest nicely together with the first 2, and they will spin nicely too. Then repeat these steps with the remaining rows. Now I have a backlog of quilts beside my long arm, and this video is already long, so I will have another video later this month on how I quilt it. If you go to my website and look under free patterns and downloads and under Stashbuster 11, you'll find a link to the free quilting math handout, plus a link to the coloring page over on PreQuilt. Stashbusters are fun to make. I love how they consume your stash and your scraps. This is the 11th in my Stashbuster series. Check out my other Stashbuster quilts in this playlist here. Take care, and I'll see you next time.